2, 3. Sound okay?
Now you're on. Ellie, hit me.
1, 2, 3. Testing.
So it might smell funny as well. There's something leaked in the...
I think it's just the smell of the leather and of the pouches that they're...
Welcome to the Cineskinny podcast, Smell the Leather. Now that's...
Podcast with the smelliest.
That's an intro. Hello and welcome back to the Cineskinny. It is the podcast from the team behind the Skinny magazine. It's the three of us today. It's me, Peter Simpson, with Ellie Robertson.
Hello.
And Jamie Dunn.
Hello.
I'm sitting at a very awkward angle, which I'm probably going to rectify shortly. I'm kind of having to give a weird side eye because I've got the mic in a mic stand, but the mic stand was too sugary to go on the table, so now it's sat on top of a plastic box. Ellie, how are you?
I'm good. I don't think I'm in anywhere near as bad a spot as you are right now.
Jamie, how's your seating situation out of 10?
It's pretty good. I'm loose. I can move around. You know, I'm not
It's
stuck
great
in
on
one
this side of the table.
weird position that's ruining my spine.
Well, all right. No one likes a bragger.
Before we go on, are we definitely recording?
We are recording on my computer, and now we're recording. So
I assumed you might be. I just thought it
We're-
would be embarrassing if...
Oh no, it would have been embarrassing, but you know what's good? You know what's not embarrassing? It's now been pointed out, and I was actually recording it, so that's definitely staying in. So on this week's podcast, we are mostly, if not entirely, going to be talking about the Glasgow Film Festival, which returns to Glasgow. That's where it's from. At the very end of this month, is that right, Jamie? Is it technically starting February?
It starts on the 26th. That's the first film, and then it runs to the 9th.
The 26th of February to the 9th of March. So we've got 3 films from the programme that we're going to review this week, and we are also going to talk about some little additionata, i.e. films that sound good but that we couldn't get around to watching. And we're also going to have just a bit of general chat, which we'll start off with, about the Glasgow Film Festival. Now, Jamie, you've been going to the Glasgow Film Festival for years and years and years.
Yes, I'm old.
Don't take that in any kind of negative sense. I'm saying that you're an expert in cinema.
Kind of. I would say I was an expert on the Glasgow Film Festival. I've been
Okay,
there for a while.
so you're welcome. Right.
I'll take
Anyway,
that.
so fill us in on GFF. For the uninitiated listening to this Scottish film podcast, GFF, how's it kind of changed over the last few years, particularly kind of in a pre and post pandemic world? And how does it kind of fit in with all the other film festivals across Scotland, the UK and beyond?
Well, the pandemic, like all kind of live events, it gave it a bit of a kicking, and it did shrink for a couple of years, but it's back, I would say, to close to its full strength. It's certainly the biggest film festival in Scotland now, so the second biggest in the UK after London. And yeah, I guess the premise of GFF is it's always been a very audience-friendly festival. It prides itself in kind of being very warm and opening. There's no kind of hierarchy. It's not the kind of festival where you're going to get like, you know, you can't mingle with the celebrities, you know, there's not like velvet ropes everywhere, and there's never that sense of FOMO where there's the cool parties happening here and you're just with the losers, and which is how I often feel at other festivals. But JFF doesn't have that. It's also Alison Garner's last year. Alison Garner, who is the director, she's been there basically since the start. She's been the GFT for ages, and she's been involved in the film festival. She's been the director for a long time. And I think a lot of the festival's kind of feeling is from her kind of force of nature. You know, she has made it a very kind of like welcoming, opening festival. So it's kind of quite exciting that she's moving on, but also quite nerve-wracking, you know, like, you know, she's a force of nature. Who's going to take over? Will they be able to capture the same sort of feeling that Alison brought to the festival? I do not know, but I'd say she's going out on a high. Like the festival has some sort of good looking stuff this year. It's opening with a Tornado, which looks to be a real coup. That's the world premiere from John McClane, the Scottish director who made the brilliant revenge western Slow West about 10 years ago now. So that's a pretty starry opening, and it's like, you know, to get a world premiere of a film that size is pretty impressive. I actually can't remember GFF having a bigger opening, really. And there's a lot of kind of big guns among the kind of guests. James McAvoy is there in conversation thing. Jessica Lange and Ed Harris are here for a new adaptation of A Long Day's Journey Tonight, a few other things like that, like kind of in-person events. But yeah, weirdly, in terms of the programme, I would say the programme looks a little bit more low-key this year, like in terms of the kind of official selection. You know, there's a lot more kind of first-time filmmakers, a kind of few kind of under-the-radar films. So it's a little bit of stepping into the unknown, but I think that's part of the fun of Glasgow, you know, like it's a festival where actually you discover a lot. And yeah, every year, you know, I would say encourage everyone just to go along and see stuff, and that's kind of like the approach we've taken here. Like the films we've chosen are kind of like slightly under the radar, I would say. And yeah, I would encourage everyone to approach GFF in the same way and just go and dive in and check out films, even though they might be from filmmakers you're unfamiliar with.
That was a beautiful 5 minutes on the GFF, and I really do want to give you credit for the fact that you didn't break concentration once while I moved my chair with a big plastic box on top of it silently across the room so that I'm now in a slightly better seating position.
I was organising my notes and I did not notice either. So I literally just looked up and you're now sitting normally.
What can we say? I'm incredibly stealthy and Jamie knows his onions.
You did it in a very quiet way. I was really annoyed, just to go off topic. I was at a press screening yesterday and someone sat next to me, came in quite late, and they took off their jacket in such a slow way. It took about 10 minutes in a way to try and be like respectful for everyone else, but actually made it really annoying because taking off a jacket very slowly is actually quite loud. So my advice, if you're into a film late, just rip it off, get it off.
Yeah.
I know.
Just open those Maltesers.
Yeah.
Just have them clatter all over the cinema.
I know Jamie's busy and I know he's got something else on immediately after this. And I know we've got a lot to get through, but tell me about this jacket. What are we talking? Suede, denim? Was it like one of those big puffy ones?
It's a -1 in Glasgow today, so it's like a big kind of Arctic jacket that was like...
Oh, like crunchy.
It was
like
very crunchy. Yeah. I mean...
Hood? Did you get hit with any kind of... did you get hit with the little rings on the end of the tassels?
I can't recall the hood, but... You know, my advice is just take your jacket off quickly.
Take your jacket off.
During a noisy bit.
Take your jacket off in the vestibule and then walk through to the cinema.
That's also good advice.
You know what? People say like that journalism's dead, but I'm going to tell you right now, we're helping everybody out. We're coming out here and we're solving problems. So Jamie Dunn first and the rest of you second. So we've set the table a little bit. GFF, Alison Gardner's last one. An interesting program. I think, yeah, you're right, Jamie. An interesting program that's doesn't have the raw star power of some past GFF programs, but it does have some very interesting things in it, which we're now going to talk about. Me and Ellie are going to talk about the first one of those things, which is Peaches Goes Bananas. So Peaches Goes Bananas is a documentary, a kind of art documentary, looking at the touring, family, and home lives of electroclash legend Peaches. So it's directed by Marie Losier, who did the Genesis Porridge documentary, The Ballad of Genesis and Lady J, who's also worked with Guy Maddin and Alan Vega from Suicide and various other people. Now, one of the interesting things about this, Ellie, this is the second of 2 Peaches documentaries that are currently on the festival circuit. And we can maybe come to Jamie Dunn a little bit on this as well in a second, but why does this keep happening? What's going on? Why does this keep happening? What's going on?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that, but it's kind of like the whole thing with, is it Deep Impact and Armageddon, which were identical films that came out the same summer, and Ants and A Bug's Life, which came out. And I can't tell the difference between these films, but fortunately with the Peaches documentary, I've only seen one of them, so I can only judge that one by its own merits.
Nice. Before Ellie judges the Peaches documentary on its own merits, Jamie, do you have any theories as to why people keep doing the same film as each other?
I mean, things are in the zeitgeist, you know? It just happens.
Things are in the zeitgeist. It just happens. Ellie, tell me about Peaches Goes Bananas.
Peaches is in the zeitgeist, or at least I think that she should be based on this documentary. It's really, really interesting because, you know, we open on this interview where Peaches talks about being the artist who wants to make growing old look hot, which, you know, she arguably is, like, you know, 25 years in and there's not a whiff of insecurity about her. She's just as kind of confident and compelling as she was when she started. But it's not really a documentary about like what it means to be Peaches 25 years on. That's the other one that I've not seen that's called The Teachers of Peaches, and it is like a much more contemporary concert film. Whereas this kind of just jumps about in time and shows kind of archival footage from across the entire timeline of her work. And I found it really, really interesting. I found it quite revelatory because I didn't know a lot about Peaches, but she hasn't really gone through phases or eras as an artist. She's always just had this very specific thing that she wanted to do. She's very sex positive, very queer, with this kind of outrageous confrontational style. And, you know, she's still playing the same hits after all this time, getting audience members up on stage. And you get this kind of montage where you see it all together throughout the years of just how much of the same wild party this show looks like. Just this big sort of like orgiastic moment of audience interaction where everyone's getting up on stage and singing along. So yeah, it's a lot less about a particular time in Peaches' career as it is a kind of profile of her whole life. It shows the constancy of her work, but also kind of the context of it. You also see like childhood clips appear of her with her family. There's little anecdotal things about her background in like making, or rather like playing music for kids. Like she worked in a daycare and thought it was really boring. So she brought her guitar in, and she talks about it like this is how she learned how to play for a punk crowd. Because if a toddler doesn't like the song you're playing, they'll just run up to you and pull your hair or something like that. So it like well prepares you for kind of this really confrontational and quite like dominating style that she has. So I did find it really interesting, you know, and again, I'm not the kind of closest to Peach's work. I think when Fuck the Pain Away came out, I was 2 years old, so I did not at the time appreciate the sort of like promotion of education and birth control that is kind of like latent in that.
You're saying you missed out on Sucking on My Titties the first time round.
Yeah, the first time round.
But now it's coming back.
Now it is, and it absolutely should, because like, yeah, it does show that, you know, it's this really kind of like in-your-face electroclash from, was it 2000 that it came out? And it's actually incredibly pressy and quite feminist in a very, very clever way. And then that's all the more relevant now. So it's just like, you know, I don't know, she's kind of like onto something. And I don't think that she necessarily needs to have eras or phases as an artist, because what this documentary shows so well is that she's kind of just like doing the right thing. Like she's still making it look really cool. And within 25 years, you know, she still looks fantastic, and she's still like getting this huge reception from her fans. I don't know, I just have a lot of respect for her now. There's a point where she's like, oh, I was curious about opera, so I decided to learn and perform an opera as a way to learn about what opera is. And I'm just like, wow, that's very cool. What a sort of like quite cool and fearless body of work she has. And I feel like the documentary does a really good job of capturing it.
It really is at every stage the exact opposite of like a rockumentary, because like it doesn't have that crisp, clear shot of like loads of people going crazy to your music. So Marie Losier shoots on, I don't know whether it's 8 or 16, it's one of the small number millimeter cameras. So it's a lot of kind of like blown out, sun bleached footage. A lot of quite kind of like hazy footage. And really interesting, the sound and pictures are almost never in sync when it shows concert footage. There'll be recorded sound from a gig and also visuals from a gig. Sometimes you get these really interesting ways that this manifests itself. There's one scene where it looks like Peaches is doing stand-up comedy because of the way that the scenes are all cut together. It looks like she's just doing a routine while dressed as some kind of vagina monster. And there's lots of stuff in this about like very un-rock and roll things about your family and about going to like see your family when you're off tour. And when they are on tour, it's all mundane stuff like sorting out the pants for the next night or arguing with your tour manager about like the shape of the set. What I will say, I did really like it. I would give fair warning to the audience. It's an art documentary. Continuity editing has become a popular thing in Western cinema for a good reason. And I think that this film really does take that kaleidoscopic approach to documentary that you see sometimes, where it just presents a bunch of different aspects of this person's character and this person's backstory, often in an order that doesn't make sense immediately, but when you think about it afterwards, it all kind of like coheres together. But if you're expecting a straight down the line, I mean, to be honest, if you're expecting a straight down the line, incredibly easy to understand documentary about Peaches, then maybe you don't know jack shit about Peaches. But there you go. That's just me saying that. Really great soundtrack. It sounded amazing on my home speaker. So presumably at the GFT, it will sound quite good. Really interesting visually and quite short, an hour and 15 minutes. So you'll be in and out. You'll have a good time.
Yeah.
Ellie says, yeah.
I mean, yeah, no, I agree. Like, I really enjoyed it. I think that it is perfect if you are kind of, like you say, it doesn't have this continuity to it. It doesn't have kind of an arc that some documentaries try and work into their narrative. It doesn't have a beginning, middle, end. And I think that's great for an artist like Peaches, because sort of the point of the documentary is, like I say, that she's kind of just as cool as she is now as she was back in 2000. So perfect if you're kind of like a casual listener, like myself, who could easily recognize a lot of these songs, like Boys Want a Beer and stuff like that. But, you know, it's kind of like all blended together quite perfectly, where you're just getting that, or a performance of that, cut in with all these different shots of her crazy costumes from over the years. So, yeah, she's very cool, very into her. It's
a good, fun wee time. So it's on the 1st and 2nd of March at Glasgow Film Festival. The 1st of March screening has a Q&A with director Marie Losier, and after you watch the film, you may have some questions about some of the decisions that were made or how the film was put together in general. So yeah, really interesting. I think, should we do letterbox scores for this one just now? I think it's a 3, but a good 3. I think it's a solid 3. I would say go and see this. But if you like Peaches, if you like kind of indie sleaze, and if you like interesting arty documentaries, go and see this film.
Yeah, I would say like 3.5 stars. Like I think that I kind of think that I'm the perfect audience for this, because I learned a lot. I got a lot out of it but I already kind of had an interest anyway.
So there you go. If you've liked what Ellie said in the podcast in the past, go and see Peaches Goes Bananas. Right, film 2, GFF, Peacock. So Matthias works at this company called My Companion, and this is a company that will provide you with effectively a high-end wingman for whatever social situation you find yourself in. You're going to a wedding. You're going to a bring your dad to work day. You're attempting to argue with your husband, and so on and so forth. So Matthias has this job. The only problem with this job seems to be that constantly pretending to be someone that you're not can lead you down some difficult and slightly absurd personal and professional rabbit holes. So this is the debut feature from Bernard Wenger. Albert Schuch, who was BAFTA nominated for All Quiet on the Western Front, is the star. He's Matthias with a lovely moustache. Anton Nuri, Julia Franz Richter are also in it. Jamie, lots of people are out in these streets saying words to me like Lanthimos and Ostland in relation to this film. What would you say to those people who are saying those things? Would you agree? Would you disagree? Or would you just say, which one's Lanthimos?
I hope I wouldn't say that. I would somewhat agree, but it's not like, I wouldn't say he's a copycat of either. And I would say that this film, if those two filmmakers put you off, I think there's actually quite a good chance you will still like this one, because even though he is borrowing some elements and there are some similarities, actually I think it's its own beast. I really was charmed by this. I really liked it. I thought it was a very unpredictable film, and I think that makes sense from the bizarre scenario we start off with. But yeah, I thought that was a film that was really good at slowly explaining the rules of Matthias's work. So like, initially I thought maybe he was going to be an escort, but one of the clients actually asks him to go to bed and he says, no, I don't know that. But he politely declines and then asks for an online review. Essentially, the film it's satirizing a few things. But it's a little bit removed from reality, so it's not exactly clear what it's not like a sledgehammer satire in the way that Ruben Östlund might make, which I enjoyed. It gave me a lot to think about. But yeah, I love how it will just like put him in a situation and you have to work out why he's in that situation. He's at school. Why is he at school? Why is he reading a book about rocket science? Why is he with this man when he's straight and got a wife? Why is he like hugging this man in an apartment? So we get dropped in on his assignments, and you kind of slowly have to work out. It's a bit like watching the start of Mission Impossible, where you're in the kind of middle of his work, and you have to work out what's Ethan Hunt up to. So it's similar with Matthias here. So I kind of liked all that. Yeah, and then the film does go in interesting directions. And what I appreciate most about it is like a lot of its comedy is very dry, and it almost always comes from the visual situations. There's a lot of Jack Tati in here, I think, the way that a lot of the comedy will just be like from the framing of how Matthias is like approaching the world.
There's one really interesting thing, like visually, in how this film is put together. It seemed to be shot in a way where a lot of the figures, like the individual people seemed really small in the frame.
Yeah.
Like characters never like fill the frame. They always seem to be kind of like dwarfed by their surroundings and the situation that they're in, which means they do some really interesting visual stuff with this one. Like you would expect an object in a scene, or like an additional non-human character in a scene to be a certain size, and that turns out to be fucking enormous.
Exactly. A lot of the jokes come from the mise-en-scène or the framing. Like there's a great sex scene, but the sex scene is essentially you're seeing a couple over the shoulder of a chihuahua that's licking its bottom. It's a film that's very aware of the camera and the set design, and that's all telling the story. It's set in this kind of very well-to-do Vienna where everything is like beautiful and everybody's got like Alexas and they use like high-tech gadgets, and it all starts to go wrong. So again, that reminds me of Jacques Tati quite a bit. And we're talking about Östlund. Yeah, there's definitely sort of like social satire here, but not as kind of icy and not as barbed. I feel like actually it's quite a gentle film, and actually the main character is like very sympathetic. Usually you hate characters in Östlund films, they're all awful, but this guy is actually, he's just lost his way a little bit. He's like a guy who's like so forgotten how to be a person. Like that's the kind of main sort of issue that he has, and he's so used to playing these characters, he's actually forgot how to be himself.
It's a kind of like social satire in the purest sense, where it's a satire of the entire concept of society and the way that this guy like maneuvers through it. Because one of the initial things that causes him all these problems at the start is that he's so good at this job where he just is chameleonically taking on these roles that are not him, that he basically forgets how to not do that. So he has these arguments with his partner where his partner's like, oh, why have you bought this enormous like white dog to go upstairs like by the front door? And he's like, it's a piece of art that people will appreciate. And she's like, why do you like it? And he's like, it's very large, isn't it?
There's also a great scene where like he has a big argument with his wife, and he can't react. He's somehow his emotions are blocked, so he goes down to his basement, and he's got this kind of like rows and rows of filing cabinets, which are all his kind of like secret identities and stuff.
I dubbed this immediately the room of ruses.
Yes.
Just where he keeps all of his, all just like perfectly wrapped, brilliant production design, all just wrapped in these kind of like brown paper bags. Like an enormous jiffy bag just with like tomorrow's suit in it.
Yeah, so like, but he goes down there to get a bit of help with getting into character. So he finds like some like Savlon, I guess, he puts under his eyes, and he goes and reconciles with his wife, and it all looks great until she just starts sniffing. You know, it's a film like a less smart film would like have a big argument there where she like says you're an arsehole, but really just she sniffs and then there's a cut and we see her going out the door. So it's a film that never really has the big explosive moment that you think it's going to have. It's much droller than that. Very funny, but in a sort of smile. Funny. I wouldn't say it's like a laugh out loud film. But I was smiling all the way through.
I would say there's 2 or 3 big laughs in it, and I would say that one bit in particular, I would say go and see this film for what I guarantee you is the single funniest Alexa play blank gag that I have ever seen in a film. I was absolutely creasing myself when this thing happened. So that is a treat ahead of you. Yeah, really interesting visually. I really like the kind of, there's just something about that kind of like Northern European, extremely efficient interior design that is very easy to mock. Because you just put it on screen and then people are like, look at this pretentious twat with his fancy, you know, name a brand of chair. IKEA. Look at this twat with his fancy chair. Yeah, it's a very kind of like dry, stilted comedy, and I think like it's just I think it's very good. There we go. I think it's very good. No, I think it's if it is maybe missing the depth of something like the best Yorgos Lanthimos ones, it's still really well done, really well acted, really like efficiently paced as well, and it does kind of build and build and build. It's lots of extremely dry fun with, like I say, a couple of absolutely enormous laughs in it. And some really, really good kind of like small performances. There's one woman who works at a plumbing company who's just constantly turning up at this boy's door at his absolute worst moments. Yeah, I would say actually, like I do agree there is elements of like Lanthimos and Ruben Austin, but I would say actually the film that it reminded me most of was Tony Erdmann. Have you seen that? Oh, it's like with Sandra Hüller. Marina Ad was the director. That kind of satirizing of like corporate Europe. That's kind of like, and I think it's actually a very European film. Like there's something about the Central Europeans who are very kind of straight laced and a bit cold maybe. And I think it satirizes that type of like well-to-do upper kind of middle class Europe very well. Yeah, like non-explosive but incredibly wily. That thing of just like sniffing somebody and not shouting at them, just being like, "You're an idiot," and then walking away. Yeah, love to see it. So, Peacock is on the 2nd and 3rd of March at the GFF. I think that the 2nd is nearly sold out, but there's plenty of tickets for the one on the 3rd. The one on the 2nd does have a Q&A with the first-time director, very impressive first-time director, Bernard Wagner. So this was Peacock. Jamie, out of 5, what did you think? I thought it was very good. I thought, especially for first film, I would give it a high 3. So I'll go 4. Oh, Christ, not this again. I'm going to go 4. Cool. I'm also going to go for a 4 because I don't believe in half marks and I'm not getting in this high 3 again. You've got to be out of here in half an hour. So that was Peacock. Go and check that one out. Okay, and finally of the 3, one that these two have seen, but I will introduce. Boys Go to Jupiter, which is an animated film directed by Julian Glander. So it's about a high school dropout who is keen to kind of make a quick buck as a gig economy delivery guy, but then his plans get somewhat derailed by an encounter with a space alien from space. That's where aliens come from. They come from space. So voices in this one include Julio Torres from Problemista, Tavi Gevinson from Gossip Girl, Elsie Fisher from 8th Grade, Maya Follick, and Joe Pera, a man after my own heart, in that he is an incredibly dry man with an incredibly low voice who bores lots of people, but they sometimes laugh at him. So you two watch this one. Ellie, you're a big animation head, is a thing that I keep saying to introduce you talking about animated films. So take it away. What did you think of Boys Go to Japan?
I really enjoyed it. I found it really, really interesting. Yeah, it's in a style of animation that I think is a little bit internet native, if that makes sense. Like earlier in the office, I said that this was like lo-fi beats to study, relax to the movie. Like it's very clear that like one of the artistic goals of the film is to create this unbelievably chill vibe for the audience, which is really, really interesting to see like in the form of a feature film. There's certain kind of like animation auteurs that you can find who've got a really big following on YouTube, like Louis Zong or Ian Worthington from Worthy Kids, who kind of, I think, like work in this style. So that can give you a sense of what you're in for. It's very vibey, vaporwave or nostalgic or whatever TikTok terms that you want to describe it by. It's all these little sort of cute toyetic models. Everybody is this little blob person. It's got this very smooth texture on everything that reminds me a lot of like the 1990s Pixar shorts, because like it is like the design is really, really beautiful. The animation itself is a little bit janky, like nothing moves in a particularly lively way, and the lip syncing is a little bit off. So there is a crudeness, but I do think that pairs well with kind of like what we're following, which is like these sort of, you know, burnout kids hanging out in a parking lot. Like all of the lines are delivered with this kind of like irony-pilled, mumbling hipster, you know, unaffectedness. But that's not to say that they're not poor performances. They're very strong performances. As you say, there's loads of interesting people involved in this one. Elsie Fisher. One that I found really interesting was Janine Garofalo has a great role in this, and there's loads of cameos by comedians like Joe Pera, and I really like Chris Fleming and Demi Adejuyigbe, so they're both in this film. And yeah, it's about this guy trying to make money in between Christmas and New Year, but because it's set in Florida, it has this very like oppressive, lazy summer vibe. It's kind of like a small town where everything's just sort of come to a standstill and everyone's just, I don't know, like hanging out, you know? So the plot, it doesn't feel like we're really like, you know, driving into this plot of this guy finding a little alien mutant worm thing. In fact, a lot of the time we just cut back to his pals and see what they're up to. So it's a little bit episodic, I guess. What do you say? Slightly like anthological. But there's like some substance to it that I found really interesting. There's like lots of discussions about kind of the gig economy and the question of how are you going to make this money, and kind of like how much you have to put so much of like, I don't know, you have to commodify your labor so aggressively today. Every time he opens his phone, there's this like grind set influencer talking about how like, you know, making money is like a state of mind or some such nonsense. Which I just find really interesting, that it does have this very anti-capitalist streak to it. Because I think that like this style of animation, or at least this style of design, it's the kind of thing that has been utilized by corporations. And I think that now it's very important for corporations and or what we now call platforms and apps to have this very like cute, user-friendly, quite fun interface. So it was nice to see those sorts of design sensibilities, that kind of color palette, being like, you know, taken back by, you know, an artistic team who really just want to make something that has a really strong tone, really fun characters, and just a really enjoyable viewing experience.
Yeah, I was completely charmed by this one as well. Yeah, it's essentially a slacker hangout movie with a kind of surreal sci-fi twist. And I really like the kind of main character, Billy 5000. Is that right?
I think
or 500,
so, yeah.
Billy 500.
Yeah.
You know, he's like this little go-getter entrepreneur who's like on his little e-scooter thing, or is it Segway or something? But he's shooting around town. He's want to make money. He's found like a loophole in the app, and you think he's going to like get one over on this kind of Deliveroo style like app. I think it's called, what's it called? Grubber?
Yeah.
Have a grubby day. Have a grubby day. Yeah. So I love all that, and like, you know, he's this like, it's almost like you think it's going to be like a little 80s movie where he's getting one over on the man, but actually it becomes something, like you say, something quite different. It's actually much more anti-capitalist, and it's like, and to see where it goes and where it ends up, it ends up in a really kind of beautiful, like a kind of found family situation, which I found really surprising, really lovely. And and the story is like pure surrealism. I think, have we mentioned it's like a musical as well, essentially?
Yeah.
Like it's full of these kind of little musical digressions. So you'll have like a little episode. Essentially, most of it is like either hanging out with Billy and his friends, or Billy delivering to the oddballs around town. It's this idea of like the town is a bit like The Simpsons, and is a town just full of eccentrics. Or I was thinking, actually, maybe I've just got David Lynch on the mind because he died recently, but I was also reminded a little bit of Twin Peaks, and the idea that this kind of small town where actually behind every door there's a little weirdo who wants to see you eat a hot dog for their perverse pleasure, or there's a secret underground lair where a kind of mad dolphin doctor is up to no good, you know, like, so like it's a really rich film in that way, but it's also incredibly simple. In terms of, it's just like, again, it's just a few, like you say, little vignettes strung together by some beautiful music. And there's at one point there's an alien who seems to be some sort of like intergalactic blogger singing about food. You know, so like it's a very strange film, you know, like and the animation, yeah, I agree, is like, it's very beautiful in one sense. Like it's very often these sort of geometric tableaus where you'll see like a big cross section of the town with these little figures, and then you have a close up and you realize the figures actually just look like little Playmobil. They've not got much detail. It's like a little round head, beady eyes. So you don't get much detail from the actual characters, but the voice acting is really rich. So I think actually a lot of the characterization just comes from the voice acting. And yeah, it's a whole mix of, like you say, famous people to like actually I think just pals of the director. The main guy who plays Billy 500, I think, is a TikToker who works for NPR. He's called Jake Corbett, and he basically makes TikTok videos about to explain economics in a very fun way.
Yeah, kind of like NPR's like finance TikTok.
Yeah, that's the guy. So like it's almost like a stunt casting that he's now playing this little entrepreneur who's trying to make £5,000, and he's like following all these TikTok bloggers who are going to give him advice on how to make £5,000. Yeah, very surreal, very funny. Very slight, I would say. Like it's not like it's a feature length film, but it almost could be a short. It's like there's not a lot to it, but it's so charming. And like I say, I was like just so surprised by the kind of beautiful, hopeful ending that it creates. Maybe we could all find love after the capitalist existence we live in, and sort of go where Billy goes. I don't want to tell you where it goes because it's amazing. But yeah, maybe we don't all have to.
Let's stop talking crazy about trying to get outside of capitalism and find love. That sounds delightful. I would like to see it. And luckily, it's on at the Glasgow Film Festival. It's on the 4th and the 5th of March, I believe, at the GFT. What did you two think, scores-wise, out of 5?
I would give it like 4 stars.
Again, another high 3. I think it's like I was just charmed. I defy someone to like not like this film. It'd be like kicking a puppy or kicking one of the cute little donut aliens that exist in this world. So like it's just like adorable. And like I say, the animation is not the most technically proficient, but you know, consider it was just made by some guy on his own. Like it's like pretty much self-made and self-financed. It's a kind of quite a great achievement. So I think, it's definitely worth a watch.
Amazing. So that's Boys Go to Jupiter, 4th and 5th of March. Okay, so that was 3 films that I think we all agreed were pretty good, but all also like mercifully not like trying to eat a full 3-course meal stuffed into one sandwich. You know, mentally, cinema-wise, after you've watched these films, you got room for more films. And when you're at the Glasgow Film Festival, there's always more of those good films to be found. We're just going to, before we finish, basically just plug a bunch of other stuff, some of which we haven't seen, but some of which we have seen. One of the things about GFF is they always have really, really good retrospective type stuff. They're generally quite good at getting good first goes at kind of not repress is the wrong word. What's the word I'm looking for, Jamie? Restorations. There we go. So yeah, a couple of things I wanted to flag up early doors. We mentioned Yorgos Lanthimos earlier. They've got the 4K restoration of Dogtooth is playing at GFF on the 6th of March. Dogtooth, a very, very good and very creepy film about why you shouldn't trust anyone's dad. That's what the film's about. And they also have the 30th anniversary restoration of Showgirls, Paul Verhoeven. I love Paul Verhoeven. I tell them this all the time. And they say, save it for the podcast, Peter. I'm trying to have my lunch. Well, now we're making the podcast. Now I'm going to tell you. So, yeah, 2nd of March for the 30th anniversary restoration of Showgirls. And one other thing I want to flag up in this vein is the GFT are moving away from Scorsese of the month and into Coen Brothers of the month. I wanted to pitch a Coen Brothers only edition or version of this podcast, either a podcast within a podcast or just a new version of the podcast. I had the name and everything. It was going to be called Coen Heads, and then nobody wanted to do it. But yeah, the first...
Now's the perfect excuse to do it.
Well, exactly, and we will. So listen out for that in March. But yeah, on the 3rd of March, as part of GFF, they're launching this season with one of the better Coen Brothers films, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, with George Clooney. And it's Torturo, isn't it?
Torturo.
Yeah.
I gotta say, actually, that's not my favourite Coen Brothers film.
Okay, what's your favourite Coen Brothers film? It's not my favourite Coen Brothers film either, Jimmy, but what's your favourite Coen Brothers film?
Oh, my favourite one
is
The Big Lebowski, I would say.
My favourite one's Fargo.
That's also very
Ellie,
good.
what's your favourite Coen Brothers
I
film?
don't know. I was also going to say The Big Lebowski, but I also really liked Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Unless that's not the one that I'm thinking of.
You know what? There's legs in this Coen Brothers podcast. Ellie, have you got anything you would like to recommend additionally from the GFF programme?
Not particularly. There was loads of stuff that I wanted to check out that we didn't have the chance to go through. There's just some really interesting sounding films. There's a Nigerian film by director Ishaya Bako called I Do Not Come to You by Chance, and it's about a young man who, desperate to make money, decides to work with his uncle, who is the guy who sends out all of the Nigerian prince email scams. And I'm just like, that sounds great. That's on Monday, March 3rd and Tuesday, March 4th. Also, has anybody seen one of these baby assassin films?
I have
good?
actually. Yeah, they are good.
Yeah, because they're doing like a third one. The third baby
It's the
assassin
third one,
film.
yeah. I think I've seen Baby Assassin 2 and it was great.
Which I just like. I think that, yeah, they always show up at Glasgow Film Festival and they just seem like a bit of a cult thing. And I'm like, oh, I kind of want to check it out. I want to be in on the fun. So Baby Assassin's Nice Days is showing on Monday, March 3rd and Tuesday, March 4th at 8:45 p.m. and 6:15 p.m. respectively. Also, one of the Baby Assassins, whose name I maybe don't know, again, because I've never seen this, Akari Takeshi, is also appearing in another action film that's showing at Glasgow Film Festival, which is called Ghost Killer, which shows on Saturday, March 1st, 8:30 p.m. or Sunday, March 2nd, 5:45 p.m. So if you go and see any such Baby Assassins or Ghost Killers, I might be there because I want to check those out.
Excellent. Jamie, I hope I cut all my coughing out. But now I'll come to you, as if nothing happened, and ask you what other films you'd like to recommend at Glasgow Film Festival.
Well, one I've seen already, which I would heartily recommend, is On Falling. It's Aurora Kerr's drama about a young woman, a Portuguese woman who lives in Edinburgh, and she works in a kind of Amazon-like factory where she's part of she's the picker, essentially, which is this job where you pick up everybody's order. And it's, a really good film about, like, working poverty, which you don't really see very often. It's like how actually, having a kind of like low paid job in a city like Edinburgh is actually impossible, and it like really details the kind of precarity of that kind of job, just like living month by month, and the kind of the difficulty of it, and how like actually a lot of people are probably in that position where by the end of every month they're like struggling, and it's just details that she's like not destitute, but she's very close to it, and it's like a really one of the better films I've seen looking at that. 5 stars, The Skinny. Yes. I'm sure we'll probably talk about On Falling more near the time it comes out. Yeah, it's UK releases March, isn't it? It's out very soon, yeah. But definitely worth watching. I also like the look of this film, this New Zealand film called Went Up the Hill, simply because the director's last film, the director's called Samuel van Greenven, and he made a really great debut about 5 years ago now called Sequin in a Blue Room. And this one sounds quite different. This was a kind of ghost story about the relationship that forms between a woman and her dead wife's son. Vicky Creeps is in it, who's very great. One of the kids from Stranger Things plays the son. Looks really interesting. And then just for a third pick to throw something in, let's have a look. I actually really like the look of this Ukrainian film called You Are the Universe. It's about a kind of space trucker who's on his way to Jupiter when he realizes that during his trip the Earth has been destroyed, and it's like him just on his own floating through space. So that's like obviously a great premise. And then I presume he meets some other people, or maybe just stays on his own. I don't know. But like I like that. I like those films like, you know, alone in space, losing your mind type films. And that looks like this might be in that vein. And it's from Ukraine. So actually, I don't think I've seen a sci-fi film made in Ukraine. You know, obviously there's lots of great Russian sci-fi films, but I don't know if I've seen a Ukrainian one, so I'm looking forward to that.
Amazing. All good picks. And there's one other thing I wanted to flag up, which is Harvest, which is the Athena Rachel Sangari adaptation of the Jim Crace book about the rural Scottish village where they all go a bit crackers because they get an unexpected series of new people come to town and they all go a bit wrong. But it looks delightful. It looks like amazing, kind of like folk horror, but like at the turn of the Industrial Revolution almost, with Caleb Landry Jones from Get Out in it. And the trailer is beautiful. It's got what's that meme, like someone who's never seen Barry Lyndon? I'm getting real Barry Lyndon vibes from this.
Yeah, it's shot by Sean William. What's he called?
Sean William
Price William. No?
Sean Price Williams. That's the name.
Sean William Scott from American Pie.
Sean Price Williams, who made what was the film with it? We really liked. He directed
Sweet East.
The Sweet East. Yes, he made the Sweet East.
Yeah, the guy with, I would say, questionable politics, but god damn it, he can point a camera at something.
Exactly. So yeah, he's a really good cinematographer, and I think this is maybe his first film made in the UK. So I'm interested to see that.
So that does look really, really good. So the thing about that is that will get a cinema release, I'm sure. Well, I mean, you can never count on it, but I'm sure
I believe it is coming out in April.
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk about that again on the podcast at a later date. But it is on March the 2nd. If you do want to see it early, there's also shitloads of other stuff on at GFF. There is their whole kind of like morning free retrospective, like matinees set up.
Yeah, I'm going to see Coyote Ugly at the Grand Ole Opry.
Jamie's going to see Coyote Ugly.
That was not my choice. I'm going there.
You know what, Jamie? You can try to resist. Try to hide from my kiss, but you can't fight Coyote Ugly at the Grand Ole Opry as part of the Glasgow Film Festival 2025. You know what? If that's not a good place to end, I don't know what is. So thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Just Peter.
We got Jamie out of the room in plenty of time. I didn't succumb to whatever kind of cough I've got.
The black lung.
Ellie is also fine.
Yeah. I feel great.
Bonza, we did it. So yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with possibly Anna Heat back. I'm not entirely sure. Definitely some good films to talk about. And we'll probably actually be out and about a lot at GFF.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we're going to try and interview some stars. We're going to try and beat Viggo Mortensen from last year. We're not going to try and beat Viggo Mortensen. He'd kick the shit out of us. But we're going to try and top that get from last year. So yeah, we'll be out and about at GFF, which begins on the 26th of February and runs into early March. This has been the Cineskinny. You can follow us on all the socials, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Goodbye.
Bye.